In this video, let's discuss about sepsis. The normal host response to an infection is a very complex process that localizes and controls bacterial invasions. Sepsis results when the response of infection becomes generalized and involves normal tissues. These tissues are usually in remote places from the site of injury or infections. For example, if a patient's hand has a small infection here, has a small wound there, ideally the body's response would be to limit the bacterial invasion from in this place itself. But if the response spills over to the other part of the body, including the whole hand as well as other parts of the body, then that would result in what is called generalized response and invasion of normal tissues. On the immune cells, there are certain receptors called pattern recognition receptors or PRRs. So these are responsible for identification of certain molecules that are present on the microbe cell walls. Examples of such molecules include peptidoglycan, which is present in the gram-positive bacilli, and lipopolysaccharide, which is present in the gram-negative bacilli. So, some examples of our pattern recognition receptors include TLRs or toll-like receptors, nucleotide oligomerization domain or NOD, and retinoic acid inducible gene 1 helicase, RIG-like helicase. So these are the three main classes of pattern recognition receptors. Now these pattern recognition receptors not only identify microbial molecules, they'll also identify certain molecules that are present within the normal cells that are invaded. Such molecules include alarmins and danger associated molecular patterns, or also called DAMPs. Some examples of danger associated molecular patterns include high mobility group box 1 protein or HMGB1 protein, S100 proteins, heat shock proteins, mitochondrial DNA, metabolic molecules such as ATP. So the binding of pattern recognition receptors with microbial wall components results in three important activities. First one is cytosolic nuclear factor kappa B activation. Second one is polymorphonuclear cells activation. Third one is pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory balance. Let us look at each one of them in detail. So cytosolic nuclear factor kappa B, when it is activated, it moves into nucleus and binds to transcription sites and induces certain genes that are responsible for the normal inflammatory response. Such genes include genes coding for pro-inflammatory cytokines such as TNF alpha, interleukin 1, They also code for chemokines such as intercellular adhesion molecule 1 or ICAM1 or vascular cell adhesion molecule 1 or VCAM1 or nitric oxide. Second response is activation of polymorphonuclear leukocytes. Once the polymorphonuclear cells are activated, they express adhesion molecules and they get aggregated onto the vascular endothelium. For example, if this is the blood vessel wall and this is the lumen, all the polymorphonuclear cells that are present within the lumen display adhesion molecules and they all get aggregated and attached to the endothelium or the vascular endothelium. This is followed by a very important step called rolling, adhesion, diapedesis and chemotaxis, together called migration. So with this mechanism, our polymorphonuclear cells are shifted from intravascular space to extravascular space or site of injury. They also release pro-inflammatory cytokines and are responsible for typical features seen on an inflammation. They are warmth, erythema and protein rich edema. The third response is pro-inflammatory to anti-inflammatory mediators. So the definition of an anti-inflammatory mediator is any molecule that inhibits the actions of TNF alpha and interleukin 1. Any such molecule is called an anti-inflammatory mediator. There is usually a balance between the pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory molecules such that the amount of pro-inflammatory molecules that are being generated is adequate and not in excess to what is required. This is counteracted or balanced by anti-inflammatory molecules if there is a excess in pro-inflammatory cytokines. However, in sepsis, this balance is lost and there is an excess of pro-inflammatory cytokines which spill into the extravascular as well as distant sites, resulting in generalized response. Transition into sepsis. So the transition into sepsis, as we have discussed, happens when there is an excess in pro-inflammatory mediators and this exceeds beyond the boundaries of invasion, boundaries of local bacterial or microbial invasion. When such a similar process occurs in non-infectious conditions such as trauma or pancreatitis, here the main response, as we have known from previously, is from alarmins and danger associated molecular patterns. Such a response due to non-infectious conditions is called systemic inflammatory response syndrome or SIRS. The exact reason for why there is an excess in pro-inflammatory cytokines or pro-inflammatory mediators is not well understood. However, there are many theories or many factors which are responsible for a person developing sepsis. First such factor is effect of microorganisms. So there are bacterial cell wall components such as endotoxin, peptidoglycan, muramyl dipeptide, lipoteichoic acid, then bacterial products such as staphylococcal enterotoxin B, toxic shock syndrome toxin 1, Pseudomonas exotoxin A, and M protein of hemolytic group A streptococci. All of these may contribute to progression of excessive response to a bacterial invasion. Second factor is excess of pro-inflammatory mediators. In certain individuals, there is large quantities of such pro-inflammatory cytokines which are released, and these spill into bloodstream and they are causing a generalized response and spillage into normal tissues. The most important cytokines which are responsible for the same are tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 1. These factors or these mediators are known to increase in their plasma concentrations during a sepsis. Both of these cytokines are known to cause fever, hypotension, leukocytosis, and they induce other pro-inflammatory mediators. They also cause activation of coagulation and fibrinolysis together. Third factor is complement activation. Complement system is a protein cascade that helps in clearing pathogens from an organism. So there is evidence that inhibition of complement system, inhibition of the cascade results in improved mortality and decreases the inflammation in animal models. These are not tried on humans. Fourth factor is genetic susceptibility. Single nucleotide polymorphisms are the most common form of genetic variations. So there are various genetic variations such that are SNPs or single nucleotide polymorphisms that are associated with an increased susceptibility to infection and poor outcomes. Such SNP variations are very much noted in patients who are much more prone to develop sepsis over others. Some of the examples of these SNP genes include the ones that encode cytokines such as TNF, lymphotoxin alpha, interleukin 10, interleukin 18, interleukin 1 receptor antagonist, interleukin 6 and interferon gamma. Then there are cell surface receptors such as CD14, MD2, toll-like receptors 2 and 4, Fc fragment of gamma receptors 2 and 3, lipopolysaccharide ligands, mannose binding lectin, heat shock protein 70, angiotensin converting enzyme, and caspase 12. The systemic effects of sepsis. The exact mechanism of cellular injury is unknown, is not completely understood, but there are certain mechanisms that are proposed for the injury, and these include tissue ischemia, cytopathic injury, or direct injury by pro-inflammatory mediators, and an altered rate of apoptosis. Let us look at each of these mechanisms in detail. First one is tissue ischemia. There are microcirculatory lesions and there are endothelial lesions. So microcirculatory lesions are the lesions present within the microcirculation, that means the lesions that are present within the arterioles and capillaries. So these cause imbalance in coagulation and fibrinolytic systems. Endothelial lesions. There is an increased receptor mediated neutrophil endothelial adherence. So the more number of polymorphonuclear leukocytes get aggregated near the endothelium, higher the amount of reactive oxygen species or ROS, higher the amount of lytic enzymes, higher the amount of cytokine mediators, higher the amount of vasoactive substances, and these all result in endothelial injury. Some of the important examples of vasoactive substances include nitric oxide, platelet derived growth factor, platelet activating factor, endothelin. In sepsis, erythrocytes or RBCs lose their ability to deform within microcirculation. So they lose their ability to deform within microcirculations, which means in the capillaries they do not change their shape to slip into the small capillaries. Instead, they become very rigid structures which are very difficult to pass through the capillaries, and as a result cause tissue ischemia. These rigid RBCs have difficulty in navigating the microcirculation during sepsis. Second mechanism, cytopathic injury. As we have learnt, pro-inflammatory mediators including cytokines, interleukin 6, TNF alpha, ICAM1, all of these, they all cause impairment of mitochondrial electron transport chain, and they also have direct inhibition on certain enzyme complexes, most of which are present within the mitochondria. Such enzyme complexes cause oxidative stress damage, and this lead to breakdown of mitochondrial DNA and further leads to cytotoxicity. The third mechanism that is responsible for systemic response is cell death pathways or alterations in apoptosis. So during the inflammatory response, pro-inflammatory cytokines may delay apoptosis. This usually happens in activated macrophages and neutrophils. So they prolong or augment the inflammatory response. More number of polymorphonuclear leukocytes or more number of inflammatory cells or immune response cells present within the circulation, the response for inflammation is also higher. Let us look into how each organ system is affected. First one is circulatory system. As we know, nitric oxide plays a very major role in the body's response to any bacterial invasion. So excessive nitric oxide production results in diffuse vasodilatation. They also cause circulatory dysfunction. Nitric oxide is actually believed to play a very central role in the incidence of hypotension in sepsis. So another factor that may contribute to the persistence of the vasodilatation during sepsis is impaired compensatory secretion of antidiuretic hormone. So there is an impaired compensatory secretion of antidiuretic hormone. So in studies it has been shown that plasma ADH levels or vasopressin levels, both are same, plasma ADH or vasopressin levels were lower in patients with septic shock than in patients with cardiogenic shock. So the first hit to persistence of vasodilatation is by excess production of nitric oxide, and the second is contribution by reduction in plasma ADH or vasopressin levels. Both of these result in persistence of vasodilatation, which further results in hypotension in sepsis and septic shock. Hypotension can also be due to redistribution of intravascular fluid. This happens due to increased endothelial permeability and reduced arterial vascular tone. So the microcirculation or capillaries are the most important target in sepsis. Patients in severe sepsis have decreased capillary density. This might be due to many reasons, first one being extrinsic compression due to tissue edema, due to endothelial swelling, and plugging of capillary lumen by leukocytes or red blood cells. This happens due to the inability to deform, as we have read previously. So diffuse endothelial activation results in widespread tissue edema. This edema is very much rich in protein. Second organ system that we are looking at is respiratory system, in particular lungs. So excessive endothelial injury in pulmonary vasculature disturbs the capillary blood flow and enhances the microvascular permeability and results in interstitial and alveolar pulmonary edema. For example, this is the alveoli, and we have the blood vessels that are there near the alveoli. There is an increased capillary endothelial permeability, which results in extravasation of all the fluid from the blood capillaries into the alveoli, resulting in collection of fluid within the alveoli. This is called pulmonary edema. There is also extravasation of fluid in the interstitial space. This results in interstitial edema. Secondly, neutrophil entrapment within the lungs microcirculation amplifies the injury. As we have seen, the polymorphonuclear cells that are aggregated within the interstitial space can also release pro-inflammatory mediators, and they by themselves can cause injury to the lung. All of this leads to ventilation perfusion mismatch, which further results in hypoxemia. This whole concept is known as acute respiratory distress syndrome. The third organ system we are looking at is liver. The same concept that happens in the lungs happen in the liver. There is an extensive endothelial injury, especially in the cases where the microbe is entering the body from the gastrointestinal system or GIT. Once they enter the portal system from the gut into liver, in normal response, the microbe or the pathogen is limited by our body's normal and natural inflammatory response. However, in cases where patient is having an excessive response, there is cytokine mediated damage of the endothelial injury, which further results in extensive damage within the liver. So it is very common to see elevated enzymes such as AST and ALT in sepsis. The fourth organ system is kidney, where there is an extensive endothelial injury, which results in acute tubular necrosis. This is mostly due to hypoxia. Fifth system is nervous system. So the nervous system complications occur very frequently in septic patients. Most common complications are altered sensorium due to encephalopathy. CNS dysfunction has been attributed to changes in metabolism and alterations in cell signaling, again due to pro-inflammatory mediators. There is dysfunction of blood-brain barrier, which probably contributes to increased leukocyte infiltration and also exposes the brain to toxic mediators, and they also actively transport the cytokines across the barrier. All of these result in mitochondrial dysfunction, and they also result in somatosensory evoked potentials and may also contribute to seizures.